All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I, she told me I had to speak into the mic today. I was a very loud teacher, and all I want to do is just like shout out. I'm like, okay, I'll use the microphone. But good morning. My name is Dr. Angelique Drakeford, and I am the principal and chief academic officer of the Urban Academy of Greater Pittsburgh Charter School in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the newly co-founder and CEO of Beyond Inclusion Consulting Company.
Woo!
Woo!
That was good. I'm Jasmine Williams. I am a communications associate at the Aurora Institute, but I also am a social media guru for the Urban Academy of Pittsburgh and also one of the co founders of Beyond Inclusion. Welcome, everyone.
All right, so let's get this started. So, Jasmine, you're up.
Mic check, 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 check. I'm a rapper on the side. It's like comedian. All right, so it's very important to know who's in the room, but the second key important thing is knowing that we are in a safe space. And here are some of our ground rules that we came up with so that we can all participate in the best way we can in this space this morning. This is going to be your morning coffee, so I hope you're ready. First things first, allowing people to speak their truth. We are coming from different expertise areas, lived experiences, so knowing there is no right or wrong. We're all learners in this space. So I encourage you all to bring up the issues you have, to talk about things that's been on your mind, and also be open to what is in this room. Remain respectful and know error is going to happen. We're all humans. Can I get an amen? Thank you. Remind yourself that it's okay to be uncomfortable and have tough conversations. So taking what you need, take your time to process, but knowing if you're here for a reason, so make sure that you participate, and I encourage you all to really tap into some of those things that maybe you may not have thought about, or just take time to ask questions as well. Last thing, take what you learn, but also be willing to be open. Anything to add, Dr. Drakeford?
Nope, I think that was great. All right, so the objective today, we're going to run through this because you all read the description, obviously. But to really walk into the room, everybody walked into the room biased. We talk about biases all the time. You all walked in here that way. We all have them no matter what. But it's actually taking a moment to reflect as we talk through what colorblind actually really means. And then understanding your role in the school culture. It doesn't matter whether you're black, brown, white, whatever. You can be colorblind. This is not exclusive to white people. Okay? So we need to be very clear about that. But just you yourselves checking yourselves at the door to say, damn, do I do that? When we made this presentation as a teacher and as a principal, I was like, oh my gosh, I have some issues with colorblindness and didn't realize it. So it's just really taking a moment to really process yourself. And then as we work through this, working together around creating strategies to make sure we are mitigating as much as possible colorblindness in the school culture as a whole. So as we walk through this process, it's what am I doing to my students? If you're a leader in the room, what type of culture am I creating when the teachers walk through the door? Are you honoring your people the same way you honor your students? So just really thinking about this as a whole. So you can Google, you can find theories, you can find different people who will define colorblindness, but we put it in the most simplest way. All right? So when one feels they do not discriminate and treats all students equally, when one avoids and or refrains from racial and ethnic identities, right? So everyone's treated equally. That's a problem. You should probably really think about that. Secondly, if I walk into the room, I'm black. Acknowledge it. It is okay to acknowledge someone is different than you, because if not, you're treating me as if I'm the same as you. No, it's okay. If someone has a disability, it's okay to address it, acknowledge them so they feel important too. They feel present. They're a part of the room. They're a part of your space. So just really thinking about this as we go through this process. All right. So my lovely assistant, Miss Stevens, she volunteered to be my assistant today. And Jasmine, they are passing out a scenario. This is a real scenario from a teacher last year, from the research that we conducted. Real thing, okay? So I want you, I'm not going to read the scenario to you, but I would like you all to just take 3 to 5 minutes, really read through it, and ask yourself, is this individual colorblind or not? And then we will unpack that together. But this is, from this teacher, these are her words. I did not make this scenario up. I pulled it. All right, so take 3 to 5 minutes.
All right, good people. Let's bring it back. Bring it back, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. Thank you. I heard a lot of things on the spectrum of I don't know to no, definitely not colorblind to hell yeah. So tell me what came up for you in your conversation. And we will pass the microphones to you all.
Our biggest problem was defining what was colorblind. In other words, in my opinion, if a person's colorblind, they don't see any difference at all. It all blends together. If you're not colorblind, then you see the differences. A person who's colorblind can't tell the difference between red and green. And a person who's colorblind doesn't see the difference between black and white and brown.
Do you think sometimes people choose
Sure.
to avoid conflict?
Right. What appears on the outside is not on the inside. I'm an American with a disability. Do I appear on the outside with a disability? Yeah. I have a service dog. Now, if I don't have the dog, you don't see the difference.
Right.
Thank you.
I said no. I said no for really four specific reasons, but I'll just say 3. The first is I want to go back to the definition that was given, and that's to avoid the idea that the color exists. And the first thing that this teacher does is creates a brown egg and a white egg. So I acknowledge that there's a difference in color. The second thing is, and my group talked about this, and I said no for this specific reason, is that it's in context. We're talking about preschool and kindergartners, and this is day 1 of teaching about race. So if I'm talking to preschools and kindergartners, first I acknowledge that we are different through the egg. However, on day 1 with the kids, I kind of want them to know, despite what we see, disability or not, we all are the same, but we are different on the outside. The third thing that I brought to my group is, as a white teacher on day 1, I can go into further conversations on day 2 and day 3 that this brown egg may go through different experiences while being packaged, delivered, sealed, et cetera, et cetera. But we also have to be a little bit, we don't have to be, I choose to be, because I will want that for myself. I have to be empathetic with, as a white person, if I assume that this brown egg goes through A, B, C, and D, and you come to me on day 3 through observations, you're going to be like, you made a whole lot of assumptions about this brown egg and this experience that doesn't exist for the whole. So I'm a little bit nervous, and that's when we turn to our directors, our programs, our executive leaders, et cetera, to kind of guide us in that. So I think there's some parameters to put around this as we move forward.
So all 3 of us in our group said yes to the teacher being colorblind, and the reason I told them that I said yes was because I feel like this was a great activity, one, but not for what she was saying with them feeling the same thing. And one, her using the comparison of her being a white woman with freckles, but different experiences come about there. And the reason I say that is at 5 and 6, you shape them, you mold them. So you can very well have those children growing up with bias towards one another. I will never feel the same in a classroom, but you don't know that, and you won't acknowledge that if you tell me that I feel the same way and I have the same heart. And what I told my group was, no one has the same heart, especially based off of who they were raised by. So if my Caucasian counterparts in class are being raised by white racists or black people with prejudice, I will not feel or share the same experiences of them, and I won't have the same heart as them. Now, if you tell me that we have the same heart and we feel the same, that's going to be untrue. So now you're not going to acknowledge how I feel as a black or brown kid, and I'm not going to acknowledge how you feel as a Caucasian kid in that class. And I'm going to grow up with that bias and tell people that I'm colorblind, but I'm really not colorblind. I see your color. I'm just not acknowledging what you go through within that scope and within that range. So it was yes for me.
Anybody agree? Any rebuttals?
Tyrone. We said that the young lady was definitely colorblind, and specifically we pointed to I taught them no matter the skin, that people were the same on the inside. And as a black male, for someone to say the color of my skin doesn't matter, I think it's pretty essential to my culture and who I am as a person. So to say you don't see that is very offensive. And the young lady, I'm sorry, Lauren said something similar, about her being a very proud brown black woman, for a white girl to tell her that we don't see you as a black girl would cause a negative reaction.
I said that she was colorblind in the most horrific ways. I hated this activity with every ounce of my soul because she's trying to reduce the lived experience of black and white people, which are totally different, into, oh yeah, look, see the egg, everybody's the same inside. And it's like, it's so not. We can't just say, oh yes, everything is beautiful, roses and sunshine, because African Americans are still being treated in a lot of aspects of our culture in horrific ways. My black colleagues could have a totally different reaction with a police officer. They could end up, handcuffed, in jail, damaged, killed, and meanwhile, they're likely to just say, "Oh, here's your warning. Have a nice day," and we can't just reduce these horrific differences in lived experience and pretend everything's okay. We can't.
So I took it to another level. I think that those that are thinking that she is colorblind because of me having to be in every situation, I'm thinking about the physical aspect. We all have a heart. We all have blood. We all have organs. Where you guys are thinking more so of how we treat it. How am I treated? So I'm thinking about the physical aspects of it, and for me, that's what she was teaching, that we all have blood, and I bleed red, even if I'm black, red, brown, whatever. I bleed red, and so that's the way I took the entire concept, and so I said no because for me, being a lower grade teacher, I the children don't think about that part of it yet. They're thinking about I have a heart, I have organs, and I have blood.
But do you think, just to give a little pushback, I know you say kids don't think about it at that age, and maybe not explicitly, but what we say to them and what we do on a regular basis, they're actually starting to develop some things based off of what is happening to them in their day-to-day experience. So they may not know that it's happening, because if you think about some of your experiences, you didn't know some things happened to you until you were grown.
And I agree with that, but what you have to understand is you have to start from the basics first. And then when they get older, you can go into depth. Because cognitive, they don't understand, the deeps and depths, we may understand it, but cognitively they don't. But we can all just go from the surface. It's just like you're scaffolding. You're going from the lower level, and then you basically build on that. So for me, I did not think she was colorblind.
I know a lot more hands are coming up. We're going to the green. But I just want to ask real quick, who's ever read the book by Beverly Tatum, Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together in the Cafeteria?
What?
Why do all the black kids sit together in the cafeteria? Where the little white boy asks the little black boy, are you brown because you drink chocolate milk? Just marinate on that.
So I said yes. I'm not a fan of these comparisons by inanimate objects. It ignores people's lived experiences. To the point, people of color, specifically black folks, have to learn about colorblindness from a very young age. Whether it's when little black girls are told that they're being fast because they're wearing shorts in the summer, or what have you. When you look at experiments like this, you ignore all of that, right? So yeah, we all have a beating heart, we all have lungs and assortment of organs, but at the end of the day, our experiences are different from birth. So I said yes.
I had thought in this lesson, I think it really makes you look at one facet of a person, and it infers that people are externally one dimension. I think if you're working with a 5-year-old and what do they most know? They most know their family. And say their family gets together and they have some Asian heritage, or they have some Indian heritage, then that teacher is saying, no, you identify as black. There are choices that are almost being made for them, but it also gets children to think that they don't have to really recognize the differences even externally. And I think then the teacher is kind of telling the children what to identify with and not recognizing the other parts of their family.
I think I don't think I've heard anyone say this. I think we kind of felt like I was unsure. I didn't really understand what was the whole point of the whole exercise or even the whole talk. The reality is we all are different. And I like what she said, like we all bleed red, but even that, our blood is different. As a trained phlebotomist in the state of Wisconsin, I can't just take my blood and put it inside of you and say that we are the same. So that definitely is wrong. I can cause death detrimental to you if I put the wrong blood in you. The next part is, I like what someone said over there about, I guess it was like integration relationships. So my uncle's married to a white woman, have been for 30 years. My auntie also adopted a white boy. I was younger. Now my kids, I have 5, all from 17 down to 6. So when my white cousin comes to my house and my kids meet him for the first time, this is your cousin. And out of my 5-year-old's mouth, how is he our cousin and he's white? We laugh, but that's how our kids think. Because they look at different colors and assume that we're different, but we're family at the end of the day. So it's just situation upon situation. And I think I was just trying to understand the scenario in the relationship here and why this particular piece had to be discussed amongst 5-year-olds. That's it.
So definitely this person is colorblind. Definitely basically had 2 grievous errors in here. One is reducing all people to their skin color and then deleting that, which basically deletes the humanity of the entire class. And so, you know, even the discussion in here about, well, this person's lived experience and that, my lived experience ain't yours. My lived experience ain't most black people's lived experience. My wife is a doctor. We have a $500,000 a year household. And so a lot of the stuff, well, black people have this. And my kids ain't faced none of that. And they never will. And so that doesn't mean that I'm different, you know, that doesn't mean that I'm not black or this is the black experience of this. I had a white person tell me one time, well, I've had more of the black experience than you have. And I looked at him and I told him, I said, if being black means being broke, you can keep that shit. Because the reality is each of us is 100% different. Each of us is different. I get the thing about the the parts inside of us, guess what? Our DNA is 90% the same as a tree. That has nothing to do with who we are. And so this whole thing, the issue is this first line. When you feel like you treat everybody equally, and when you treat everybody equally, know that you're mistreating everybody. That's what's happening. You treat everybody equally, you're mistreating everybody. So I've heard this, for you, I don't see race. I'm like, how do you not see race? I walk in the room, you look at me, you see my skin. When I walk in the room, here's what you know. I'm black, I'm male, I have no hair, and I'm overweight. You know that. The reality is, what does that trigger in your mind? That's the question. And so a lot of times what I hear is when somebody tells me, well, I don't see race, what they're really telling me is, I think being black is bad, and I don't see you like that.
Is this on?
Oh.
So I don't even know how to follow that. I had something to say, and now I'm like, what? So we were talking in our group about how the scenario is just too simplistic. We know that they're 5-year-olds, and that's might be why it's simplistic. And I thought your conversation about what your own children say and what you had to say about working with them. I remember my 4-year-old, 5-year-old asking me why we were called white when her skin is khaki. Like, why are we called white? I'm not white. Like, I'm khaki. And so I think it's so important to acknowledge the lived experiences everyone's talked about and to celebrate that diversity. That's the other thing we talked about in the group. But I also think it's really important to think about, so as you said, where do you begin that conversation? And especially as a Caucasian teacher, where do you begin that conversation so that it's a safe space that acknowledges and celebrates the diversity? We just thought the whole thing was too simple. And then we were all pretty shocked at the freckle statement. That was a bit much.
Yeah, she went to the left with the freckles. Because a kindergartner is going to go, oh. So, but the way she explained it, oh, the lady said she's mixed now. She's not mixed. She's white with freckles. But now if that little child goes and sees a white person with freckles, they're going to go, oh, you're black and white. No. I have a biracial child. My child is black and Puerto Rican. And from the jump, it's like, nope. You're both. You could check both boxes. You could check anything you feel. You're both. And so when she came out, she was so white. And I was like, oh, my God. Everybody's going to think I'm the nanny. I'm not her mother. So, but she is both. And the acknowledgement has to happen. And so I think acknowledging it and accepting what you are, no matter what it is, has to happen first. And she didn't do that. And then when she did do it, she did it in a sideways way and like mixed it all up. So I think she had the right intention, but she didn't acknowledge it and deliver it properly. And you have to do that from the beginning with young kids because they get it and they understand more than you know.
So perfect segue for me because knowledge is power, right? And although she may have had good intentions, like many people do nowadays, she definitely doesn't have a clear understanding of racial issues, right? It's too simplistic and too easy because like everybody's been saying, there is nobody in this room that is anywhere near similar, right? If you go down to the core, none of us are similar. We may have similar experiences and different experiences at the same time, but she just made it too simple.
Thank you all. Now, no.
We have one here, and then we'll wrap with you. Man, y'all got a lot to say.
So I just want to point out. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking of like when you look in the terms of like popular media, are they colorblind? Yes or no? And so I was thinking back, a little over a decade ago in the Super Bowl when the Colts and the Bears played against each other, and they made this big old deal about this is the first time 2 African-American head coaches were facing off in the Super Bowl. And then when the Colts won it, Tony Dungy being the first African-American head coach to win a Super Bowl. And I remember talking to, friends and stuff, and like, why they keep saying first Black American, head coach to win the Super Bowl? Like, why can't it just be head coach? And again, it was one of those things, we're talking about lived experiences. It's completely different. And you have some social media outlets that choose to recognize that, as others choose not to recognize that. And then the same thing with this last Super Bowl. First time we have two African American quarterbacks facing off in the Super Bowl. And relived experience with Doug Williams being the first African American quarterback to win a Super Bowl or lead a team to a Super Bowl victory. And so when you look at that, we talk about, and our group said that we said yes, that she is colorblind, and we also, well, I related it to when people say Black Lives Matter, and you hear the idea of all lives matter, that we were trained to think that instead of saying particularly Black people, brown people, whatever, it's all people, like we're all the same, and reality is we're not the same, outside or inside, based off of lived experiences. I could say, from the day I was born, I was faced with adversity, and I still am faced with adversity because of the color of my skin. So it's kind of minimizing, lived experiences. I feel it was a good approach to bring to kindergarten kids, but also at the same time, like the concept of like, as you get older, things are going to get different. Things are going to change, and that's something that you need to realize, based off of either the color of your skin or how you identify yourself.
I think, so one, I grew up in the hood, poor, but I went to a mixed high school. One of my best friends was a white female. We were inseparable, and she told me one day that I don't see you as Black. She said she was colorblind. She didn't see me as Black, and at that time I thought it was cool. I thought I was like, yeah, okay, good. You don't see me as Black, So I understand and appreciate the innocence of what this teacher is trying to do, right? And I understand that she's probably in a place where nobody is working with her, nobody is training her, and she's trying to do something that she thinks is good for all the kids. And it is so easy to look into that and just pejorative, like jump all over the little lady trying to do something with the white egg and the brown egg. And it's kind of cute, but it's also just wrong. And so who is it that is working with her, right? I stopped being friends with her. I stopped being friends with her when I came to understand what that meant. Like, oh no, I like anybody who, I like being Black. This is dope. I don't want to be anything else. I'm not at the $500,000 household yet. I'm working on that part. That's all right though. So I think, there's a part of me that wants to have hope, that wants to have love, that wants to have compassion for my white female contemporaries doing this work with nobody behind them supporting them, to say, hey, when you do this, this could be the impact. And I know what you want to do. What are ways that we can do this that are actually encompassing of the whole person who is there? Because I think it's so easy to just look in and just beat her up, right? Like someone has taught her, like this was a lesson plan that was given to her. She probably thought that up on her own, trying to do something innocent, right? And I think we want to give space and heart in conversations like this to say, we're going to get it right, we're going to get it wrong, and then we're going to get it right. And so I did not pick one or the other, because I just saw the innocence, and then I saw like, this is kind of tragic, but she really is trying to do a good thing. And if you are a majority culture, nobody is making you. There's still schools that won't do what DEI has turned into DIE. So trying to come in and do this work in schools now, you're finding a lot of resistance. And so I think that a lot of teachers are in a space where nobody is helping them get better at this.
We'll take one more person.
So I just want to point something out that, and I could be wrong, but I don't think you said that this teacher was a woman. And we have all said she, almost from the beginning. And that goes to your initial question about our internal biases. We all assumed, unless I'm wrong and you told us, that the teacher was a woman. So that should, for all of us, be a standout right there. Secondly, I think that the way that society is moving, we cannot afford to continue to suggest to ourselves or perpetuate this idea that kindergarten students and preschool students are not mature enough to have conversations about the science behind why your skin is a different color. If they can TikTok, Google, Instagram, use a cell phone, YouTube, then they can certainly have real conversations. And I have an example of an 8-year-old who we just did not goo goo gaga with him. And so I would encourage us as educators and leaders in the space not to restrict our preschoolers and our younger learners in a way that suggests that they're not prepared to have tough conversations. It's our responsibility to do the tough work to ensure that we're having the tough conversation right and well with them.
Thank you for that. That was the last one, so we're going to transition a little bit. But I do appreciate this fruitful conversation and bring that into our next parent share. So what we're going to do is now I want you to talk about how do we avoid creating this space. Some things did come up of things that we might do differently, from the curriculum that's given to the coaching to learning on their own. So go back into that same pair or form a new one and talk about how can we create some of these strategies to avoid this negative and toxic work environment where it's innocence, but it's very harmful.
And before you guys do that, I want to give a really quick story. So as you guys talk, you can really start to unpack. I student taught in 2nd grade, and we were working on timelines, and we were working on the civil rights movement. One, I shouldn't have did it the way now that I know better, I shouldn't have done it the way I did it, right? But here's the interesting part. So the vice principal at the time was trying to use the water fountain, and she couldn't understand why all the kids were lined up at one water fountain and the other water fountain was empty. And she said, I don't understand why you all aren't using both water fountains. So of course they referred to me. And they said, well, this one's for white people and this one's for black people. I didn't teach them that, but that's what they perceived from me. So that was a huge learning experience for me, because we have to be very clear and very explicit with our kids, no matter how old they are. And it sounds cute. My daughter was in gymnastics. Is your daughter the chocolate one or the vanilla one? Right? And it sounds cute. But we got to have some real conversations with our kids. It doesn't matter how old they are, because what we give off early on, they will pick it up. We picked up the bad stuff. We all picked up the bad stuff from the womb. How someone is growing their child in their womb and their environmental experiences can make a difference on how that child comes out. That child is already stressed out and going through trauma. So it starts in the womb, for real. So we have to be very, very mindful, explicit, and careful, and really unpack. And as you guys continue to talk, one big thing as we wrap up, because we don't ever want to leave without solutions. So as you all are having conversations, what are some of the things that you can do to combat this right there in your schools? And ask yourself, do you make comments or hear comments like, they're all the same? Or, I don't see color. Some of you talked about that. Sean, thank you for what you said, because I wanted to really tap into leadership. For the leaders in the room, what are you doing to make sure your teachers are ready and prepared? Are you having those tough conversations? When you walk into the building, what do your students see? Do they see themselves on the walls? Do they see themselves in the textbooks? What type of curriculum are you buying? We all know all the curriculum is all jacked up. But what are you doing to train your teachers to supplement these spaces so that when a kid opens a book that's from the inner city, they're not reading about the wilderness all the time? Right? So it's like, what are you doing? So as you all continue to have conversation, like she said, and we will make it, we won't keep you here till the whole 10:30, but really come up with solutions on what you do and what you can do, and be honest. Like, damn, I do that sometimes. I might be a little colorblind. Just say it. It is okay. And for the leaders in the room, really reflect on that around what can I do differently. For the teachers in the room and everybody else, what do I need from my administrators to make sure I'm prepared? Okay, I'll give you guys like 3 minutes. Y'all not. Let's try that again. Thank you. Hold on. Let me try that again. I was say, I know y'all lying. I know y'all know how to do that. All right, and you all could just shout out some of your answers, but just what came up. What were some of the solutions? What did you think about as far as support you may need? Anybody could just yell it out.
So I'll start off with that because we have plenty to catch.
Got it.
But, I was telling my group here how I already feel like I have that great environment. Like I said, I am in Mississippi, so we deal with a lot of those colorblind issues. Like, and we're in the Delta of Mississippi. At our school, from the jump, the very first day, as African American educators, because we have mainly African American teachers there, we acknowledge the fact that we do not share the same experiences as our Caucasian, Asian, or Hispanic students. So the scholars who were not African American, we did a 3-week professional development, just based off of how can we make sure that those scholars are heard, that they're seen, and that they feel a family culture, because we call it the legacy family. And for our black and brown scholars, we already knew how to serve them, but we still asked them, what do you need? So they asked me, like, in a structured way, what does your school do? My principal, Dr. Tamala Boyd Shaw, she oversees the school. She never makes a decision without us, and because we're the ones in the classroom. She never goes and do something. She asks, okay, if this is not working, what do we need? What can we do for this child? We include parents. We do professional development for parents, because we are great teachers, but we need great parents that are going to be involved as well, because sometimes it's just not taught. Like the 5 and 6 year old scenario, I was 6, and I was able to already identify when I was being discriminated against in my first grade classroom at 6. Because my mom had already taught me. So my teachers didn't start, my mom did. So we already have that structure, and I'm glad that I'm in that family environment, because we're just able to serve everyone. So all of our kids, no matter if they're going to the Hispanic teacher that's here with us at the conference, or they're coming to myself, they know that we're all going to serve them and get them what they need, and they're comfortable with that. So we always make sure we have a calm classroom and a safe space for them everywhere throughout the entire school. So I didn't have any extra to add on to.
No, that was good. That was good. And a lady back here had a really good point around time. You know, teachers need to be trained, but there's not a lot of time. So it's going to take the leadership in the building to get really innovative around how to make the time. So for us, we added over the past few years more and more half days, so that the teachers can get that professional development. The kids leave, and we do professional development right there. And then I try to wean it off like an hour or so they can still update their grades and stuff. But you have to be innovative and creative with your schedules to allow that opportunity for your teachers to get what it is that they need. And then we also got to start vetting the people who are doing the training a little bit better too. Because they walk up in there and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just hired them. You know, so going out and seeing who these people are to make sure they are teaching the things that they need to teach appropriately to your staff. Anybody else want to shout something out? Have a safe flight.
Thank you.
Over here in our group, we talked about the same thing about, because I was thinking back to my teacher preparation programs and stuff, and the talk of race and equality and diversity in the classroom was never presented in my teacher preparation programs. It just was not there. And so I'm looking back at my own schooling as a student, and then my preparation before I stepped into the classroom, I wasn't fully prepared to address that in the classroom and make that part of my curriculum. So when you say, teachers of color are more apt to talk about race in the classroom as opposed to teachers who are not of color, because we haven't had that training, we haven't had that exposure. And so being able to have that training, that exposure, and to discuss amongst your colleagues, lived experiences and how that is relatable to our students and how that could further enhance and their development and their education, their academics. I think it's very important because we can't just put someone in, on the battlefield without training. You got to be trained before you get there. I'm not going to pay you $1 million to dunk a basketball if you're not going to practice. I'm not going to do it. So providing the space for that professional development to be more culturally responsive in the classroom for our students and be able to have those tough discussions, because we can't assume that they're having those tough discussions at home. And the discussions that they may be having out in the streets may be detrimental to their well-being. So we got to be able to provide a safe environment to have those discussions in the classroom, for not just teacher development, but student development as well, and building that relationship.
We have 2 more people, and then we'll wrap it up.
So I think that the first thing that everybody has to do, you have to acknowledge that there's a problem. People in general do not like change. And if you cannot acknowledge that a problem exists or that a bias exists, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. Then on top of that, you have to have the want and or the desire in order to make a difference and or make a change. Like, perfect example, I have privilege. I'm a man. I was brought up by one of my colleagues that I can be sexist in moments. I had no idea that I was doing that, but I've acknowledged it, and any time that I make a conscientious effort to not do that. So I've acknowledged that there's a problem that I have. I've acknowledged the privilege that I have. But at the same time, everybody's not willing to acknowledge the problem of discrimination and being colorblind within the classroom and within society. So if you're at an organization and your leader cannot make that distinction, there's nothing that you're going to be able to do from that standpoint. So you've got to acknowledge your problem. You've got to acknowledge the bias that exists and start there. Because, again, people don't like change. I'm 41 years old. How I am is how I am. And right now, in order for me to change anything that I do, I've got to feel powerful enough about it. Like, it has to be a conviction for me. And if this is not convicting for you, my eyes, you shouldn't be in the education field in general. I tell people all the time that education is so rewarding, but it's not easy. There are so many more jobs that you could take making more money, having less stress, not having to deal with all the issues that you do, not being a parent, not being a teacher, not being a counselor, not being a grandparent, not being everything to these kids. But I tell people all the time is that what we do is not hard work, it's heart work. And if your heart's not in it, then there's no point in you doing it. But at the same time, you have to be able to acknowledge the issues exist, and you have to be able to willing to tackle them.
Thank you.
We brought up just starting off like a attention grabbing device. We brought up a context from the Bible where it says, "Thou shalt not eat pork." When Moses, in his Egyptian name, his name was actually Akhenaten, traveled over, and he said, "Thou shalt not eat pork." And in the context of "thou shalt not eat pork," the reason why was because pork cannot sit out in the heat or you get sick. And they didn't have refrigerators. So there's a context and a parameter we must put around things. That brings me back to the point we had a conversation that imagine in this context we started and we took a screenshot of this presentation and stopped it at 3 minutes and said, "Were y'all effective in what y'all did?" and everybody left. And then critiqued y'all and then put y'all out to the rest of the world and gave you a grade letter. That's the context of what's going on right now. I think going back to the point of curriculum and professional development, there's an actual science behind this. So we talked about human beings start off with the reptilian brain as humans as we evolved. And the reptilian brain deals with fight, flight, and emotion. And as we evolve, we cultivate, I tell my students, the limbic system. L stands for logic. So we have the reptilian brain. So I see something over here, an animal attacking something. I have an emotional response. As I evolve, or as we evolve, we develop this limbic system, and now there's logic as why this happened. Now, if I change the emotion to what I just seen, then I change the story to why it happened. So first emotion and then logic. Now if we're talking about skin color, we can talk about Dinkash the first, or Lucy. He named her after his wife, but Dinkash, and how we evolve as humans. So this goes back into actual science and data that we can go back into. So Africans or blacks, starting with Dinkash. Then you have the Cohesians, who are African tribes that went into Asia, became lighter in their skin tone, and then Dravidians essentially going up into Europe and then becoming white, and then you have the Australoids, et cetera, coming into Mexico. I think it's important that we actually go to context and we say specific names, address that we have emotions, and then we develop logic. And then the third part is, again, get to the actual science and the naming of things in order to push this context further.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because there will be a colorblind 2 coming. But the lady back here, she really talked a lot about really disrupting the system and looking at the science and making sure we all have the knowledge we need to. So we all need to be learning at all times. Because here's one thing that's very, very important. I think we need to make sure we say it. For the black people in the room, your black is not enough. Everybody is from somewhere, everybody has different experiences. You know, even when we interview teachers and we ask our cultural questions and they put one group of people in one box, it's like, nah, I'm black, she's black, but we grew up completely different. Our cultures are not necessarily the same. So when I did this research, I took this piece, but and even though I'm a researcher, there's a lot of flaws in research, so be careful with that. But the research was based around how does someone's socioeconomic status affect how they discipline in the classroom. And what I found was that whether they were black or white, those people that came from a higher socioeconomic background were actually they were harder on their kids. Their consequences were very punitive. They did not focus on relationships. But those teachers, there was this white teacher, y'all, she was so crazy. She would not stop cussing as she was talking to me. She was like, just being herself. Even when I whoop my kids, I do this, I do that. But she said with her teachers, the teachers that she works with, and she's been teaching for 26 years, high school teacher, if a kid comes in and puts their head down, some of her colleagues, the first thing put your head up. Resource officer, come get them out of here. But for her, what time did you go to bed last night? But she already built the relationships, and she said, I know you got off of work late. Take like 10 minutes, but then I'm gonna need you to get up. That's it. It was that simple. Or the way she implements different things in her classroom around curriculum and relationships, that taps into a whole nother piece of all of this, because all of that really matters. But we have to be very careful, because a lot of times, I've worked with them. I accidentally hired them. Oh, I'm black, I know how to teach them. No, that doesn't mean that. You made that up. Because I also witnessed a teacher say, well, I don't understand why you're not smiling. You're young. You should be smiling all the time. Homegirl didn't know that her 2 uncles were just on the news the other day for shooting a 7-year-old and his father. You don't know what she's going through. How about saying, you okay? Are you all right? That's it. Now you're jumping on this kid for being sad. This all taps into all of this as a whole. I know I got to get you guys out of here. We got to get out of here too. But just some additional strategies, Jazz, before I go to that. You have some? No, go ahead. Okay. Just becoming more aware, tapping in yourself, going to go find knowledge. And let me say this. Black people are not responsible for teaching everybody everything either. You get to pick and choose. So if you're someone that says, and I tell my white colleagues all the time, you can ask me questions. That's fine.
But I don't want questions.
But right, her and I are so different in this space, which makes us very unique. But I don't mind, because that's just who I am. But it's actually not my responsibility. That's just what I do. I just can't help myself. Attacking your own bias, being careful with your words. participating in diverse spaces. Stop just sitting right there at your school. This is what we do here. Go see what other people are doing. Go do research yourself. We talked about the leadership and how the leadership needs to tap in, but it is your responsibility to make sure you are learning. So if we're all educators here, we all know we're ongoing learners. Tap in yourself, but also be careful with the resources that you're looking at, because
Let me add real quick. And there were over 50 people in this room that you could connect with. So you're welcome.
And establish trust with your team. You know, and I know some of y'all might have unions and stuff, so I do things a little differently because I don't. But, you know, a teacher is in the hallway and she says, oh, he's coming back? No, I don't want him in here. Get him out of here. Goes on this whole rant. Now, granted, I'm the type, I don't address the teachers in front of children and other teachers, so I'm like, I need to see you in my office in about 10 minutes. And what I had to say to her was, mind you, this little boy was in the 1st grade. I took that real personal, because if my son decided to start coming to school and cut up for a second or longer, I don't know, you just gonna throw him away? Don't do that. You tap in, figure it out, ask why, have conversations, and don't call home, talk about something going on at home. No, let's just have a conversation. But you're not gonna just throw a kid away because they start cutting up, because they feel that when they walk in a room. They know if teachers don't like them. If a kid says, oh, my teacher's mean, they know the difference between a mean teacher and someone who's just structured. Tap in, get to know them, so that colorblindness goes so beyond just the physical aspect. It's about tapping in externally and internally. A lot of you here, I know you guys have a lot of ELL students. We haven't had that opportunity yet, but I know it's coming and we're going to prepare for it. But it's like, tap into everybody in your classroom. Learn for yourself. At our school, we do home visits. Well, since COVID, we don't go in their homes, but we have conversations with our families at the very beginning of the year so we could get to know them. When we were doing home visits, I was literally in every one of my students' houses. And I know it sounds a little crazy nowadays, but we got to get back to some of those things, because that's how you start to learn who your kids are, who your families are. So instead of somebody walking around saying, oh, their mother doesn't care, their parents don't care, you don't know that. How about she's at work? Or how about homework is just not a priority because there's other things going on. So just constantly hitting the reset button and reflecting ourselves.
And the last thing I'll add is we all are in some control of influence. And you have to tap into what that means for you. Talk to people in this room, email us. There might be a go-to person at your school or institution, but you have to tap into it, because even if you are a first-year teacher or a superintendent, we all have a realm of influence that's in our control. And also the sheet, if it's okay with Dr. Drakeford, you can use this. You can model us and start this conversation, but also know that this PowerPoint is also uploaded on the app as well. So I know y'all taking pictures, but you have access to it after this.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Any lasting questions? We have about 5 more minutes, but any questions or any things that you all want to say before going?
Can I say this really quick? And I don't want to be insensitive. To all the my white counterparts in the room, I appreciate you being here.
Can you wait? Can you please repeat that on the microphone? Thank you.
To all of my white counterparts, don't take this the wrong way. I appreciate you being here, and I'm gonna tell you why. When a person comes to me and say, hey, I think this will be a good training for you to go attend, and just let me know what you think about it. No, you come sit in here with me and we learn together. Don't tell me that because you're being insensitive to me right now. It's not just for me, it's for you too. You work with our kids. And if you work with our kids, it's so important that you understand our kids. I met a principal yesterday from Salt Lake City, and one of the things we talked about, I asked her role, she's a principal, and she said, I'm just trying to learn and understand my kids. And I said, I can appreciate you saying that, because a lot of our principals and all of our teachers, they don't have that in mind. They're the work, but our kids really look up to you guys. I look up to you. I admire you guys. You know, I've always been one that just, I don't see color to the point of, because you're different, it's a difference. All of my kids, they go to different schools. They got public, they got private, all of this other sector stuff. But I can appreciate y'all being here. I really do. And to my brothers, this is my last one. My man right here, you superintendent with the hat? Yes, sir. Where I'm from, if he walks down the street, he's not gonna be looked at as a superintendent. But I can appreciate you coming in here like that because we already stereotyped him how he dressed. You see what I'm saying? I did a scenario here at the conference. I had switched it up. I had my hat and my J's and my shorts on yesterday, and I did a study on my own. And I did get different. I did get looked at different. I did get approached differently versus someone else that had the same situation. So, yeah, just thank y'all. I just had to let that out.
We appreciate your positivity. Thank you. Before I let you all go, anything from anybody? Oh, good question. So the one she mentioned, why are all the white kids sitting at, or black kids sitting at the lunch table? Multiplication is for white people is a really, really good one. It really talks about how the moment they compare an African baby and a white baby and just how they move from the moment they come out of the womb and the differences. And a big piece of this book is a lot of times they're either the same or the black kid is actually more advanced. That black kid doesn't start to regress until they get to school because of how they are made to feel. That would be my there's a lot more, but and I could add some stuff to that app as well, but that would be a really good one.
You know what a good thing you could do is you can take down our emails and you can email us and we could send you an extensive list.
Yes, I would be honored.
But those
to
are
do
some
that.
those are some great starts. I just want to plug one good opportunity if your school still has some professional development in their budget, if y'all fiscal year didn't end yet. The State of Black Learning is happening in August. Sorry, I'm running out of breath. In August 9th through 11th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where the focus is on black children. I have flyers in the front.
And it's annual. It's annual.
It is annual.
So if it's not in the budget this year, come next year.
Hold your hand up. I'll be at the back saying
Thank you,
goodbye
Jess.
to you all, and I'll hand one to you. But thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you all for being such great participants. You made it much easier for us. We appreciate you all. Safe travels home. Thank you. Oh, do the survey in the app, please. We need feedback. Do the survey, please.